Welcome back, house kids. Eric here. Today's Saturday, January 16th, and we have been going through the book of Judges. Last week, we are in the book of Ruth, which happened during the time of Judges. And this week, we're going into a new book. That's right, we got a new book. We are getting into the book of Samuel. Now, Samuel's broken up into two separate books, Samuel 1 and Samuel 2. Of course, we're going to be starting in Samuel 1. So, you could think of Samuel as the last of the judges. If you recall, in the Judges, and throughout the whole book of the Judges, during that time, the Israelites made it to the promised land, but then they kept forgetting God and disobeying him and worshiping false idols, and then bad things happened, and then they cried out to the Lord, and the Lord brought a judge to help lead them and guide them to follow God and do the right things, and then everything's good again, and then the cycle would repeat itself. It would be bad, and then they would cry out to the Lord, and that just kept going, right? And so we can think of Samuel as the last of the judges in a way. So let's get into the story. Where we are in this one is going to be 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 3. All right, and this is kind of the beginning of Samuel, who he is and where he comes from. All right, so let's figure that out. Hannah, which was a woman, and her husband, Elkanah, was from the place called Ephraim. Okay, and Hannah wanted to be a mom. More than anything, she was like, I just want to be a mom so badly, but she wasn't pregnant. She wasn't getting pregnant, and she was upset about that. And so her husband would travel once a year to the tabernacle to sacrifice to the Lord and to worship God. And this one year, Hannah came with him. And while they were there, Hannah prayed out to God and said, Lord, I just want to be a mom so badly. Will you please give me a child? And she says, Lord, if you give me a son, I promise I will dedicate that son to you and he will serve you for his entire life. And while she's praying this prayer, there's a priest over near the front of the tabernacle. His name's Eli. He's watching her. And he can't really tell what she's saying. He can't hear her, but he could see she's being dramatic. And he's like, what is wrong with this woman? And so he ends up going over to Hannah going, pretty much saying, ma'am, are you all right? And she explains to him. Hannah says, look, I just really want to I'm praying to God that he gives me a child. And I'm promising God, if he does give me a child, if it's a son, I will dedicate that son to God, and he will worship, or he will serve the Lord his entire life. And so Eli says, well, hopefully God grants your prayer. And Hannah and her husband go home, and God grants that prayer. Hannah becomes pregnant. Oh my gosh, God is so awesome. And it's a son. She has a son, and she names him Samuel. Ding! Now we know where Samuel comes from. All right, so she names him Samuel, and once Samuel grows up and grows up out of the baby phase, once he's not a baby anymore and he's a little boy, the next time they go to the tabernacle, she brings Samuel with them to the tabernacle, and she sees Eli the priest, and she says, hey, remember me? God's prayer that I prayed to God came true, and I had a son. His name is Samuel, and I promised God that I would dedicate this boy to him. And so she gives Samuel to Eli to grow up there at the tabernacle with the priests, to become a priest and to serve God in his life. And so Eli says, well, that's awesome. And she worships God, and then her and her husband go back home, and Samuel ends up growing up with the priests there, and Eli, who kind of helps raise him. Now, Hannah and her husband back at home, they end up having lots of children. So they're blessed. It's kind of a win-win. God has Samuel, who's going to serve him, and Hannah, because she cried out to the Lord and she trusted in him, she now has lots of kids. And so it's a win-win. So Samuel kind of grows up there with the priest, serves the Lord. He's obedient to God. But you know what? Eli's children, his sons, they're not. They're naughty. They sin against God. They don't care about God. And Eli, when he brings it up to his sons, he's like, guys, sons, why do you sin? They don't care. They're just naughty. They're like, whatever, Dad. We do what we want. You know, they're like that about it. And so that makes Eli kind of sad. And so one day you have Eli sleeping, it's at night, and then Samuel's also sleeping just inside the tabernacle. And Samuel hears someone call out to him, Samuel, Samuel. Samuel wakes up, walks over to Eli, says, yes, Eli, what do you want? Eli says, I don't want anything. What do you, go back to bed. Samuel's like, all right. So Samuel goes back to bed, and he hears it again. Samuel, Samuel. All right. And he goes over to Eli. Yes, Eli, what is it? What do you want? Eli says, I don't want anything. Go back to bed. Samuel goes back to bed, and it happens a third time. He hears his name being called out to him. Samuel, Samuel. So Samuel gets up and goes over to Eli. I heard you call my name again, Eli. What is it you want? Eli says, I didn't call your name. I don't want... And Eli realizes what's happening. He's like, Samuel, I am not calling your name. You know what? God is trying to speak to you. Here's what you need to do. And he explains to Samuel how Samuel needs to respond when God speaks out to him. And so Samuel goes back to bed. And when God calls out to him again, Samuel, Samuel, Samuel wakes up and says, yes, Lord, your servant is here. Speak to me. What is it you want to say? And God tells Samuel, I am going to punish and judge Eli's family for they sin against me. Probably not exactly what Samuel was thinking he was going to say. So he goes back to bed eventually once after God tells him what he's going to tell him. And in the morning, Samuel does not want to tell Eli the bad news, if you know what I mean. But Eli comes up to Samuel and is like, so, Samuel, what did God tell you? So Samuel tells Eli, God is going to punish your family because they sin against him. Ouch. Wah, wah. This is just the beginning, we can see, of who Samuel is in God's story. God ends up speaking to Samuel, and Samuel listens. And so God, when he wants to talk to his people, he talks through Samuel. So Samuel's kind of like God's messenger. That's who Samuel was born to be, and that's who he was. And he was obedient to God, so he was exactly what he was meant to be, which is awesome. Now, in this story, we can notice that God was seeking Samuel out. But Samuel didn't know that God was seeking him out until he was listening for God, until he was paying attention that it was God. And just like that, God seeks us out. He doesn't wait for us to be perfect so that we can do only good. He seeks us out where we are right now. And so it's just up to us to listen, just like Samuel listens to God. And so we'll hear more stories going forward of Samuel, but this is the beginning of Samuel and who he is as a messenger of God. So if you look in the description below, we have all the printouts you're going to need. We have a coloring sheet of the week. And here's little Samuel and his mom. She's bringing him a robe. In the story, by the way, every year she does come back to visit her son Samuel, and she always brings him a new robe. So that's another little part of the story there you can hear. And so here she is bringing him a robe, and here's Eli. And so it says, God called Hannah's son to share God's plan. We got an activity sheet you can print out. It's called What Sense Is It? And you know, we have our 5 senses. It shows our nose, our ear, our tongue, our eyes, and our hand. It's for touch, seeing, tasting, hearing, and smelling. God gave us all these senses so that we could interact with the world around us. And what you do on this activity sheet is there's going to be 5 different things on the left over here, and you got to connect what it is to the correct sense. As an example, would you taste a skunk? No! So you got to figure out what you do with all those and connect them. That'll be fun for you. Definitely don't taste a skunk. That's a good tip from Eric here. Check out the craft that Robin made. Ooh, it's Hannah. Look at her. How cool is this? She is here. No baby. No baby at all. And then if you open her arms, she's got a baby. There's baby Samuel. How cool is that? Great job, Robin. No baby. Baby. Now, you can make this too. Down below in the description is a video that Robin made on how you can make this. Also, in the link to the folder down below with the coloring pages and stuff, there's the templates for this that you can print out so that you too can make this. There's also the video of the week about Hannah, all right, and Samuel. So that's this story, getting into Samuel. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you next week. Take it easy.